At the gleaming reception desk of the ultra-modern Olympus Tech Hub in Manchester, no one could decipher the frantic pleas of the esteemed Japanese tech heiress. "That Caucasian woman has been disrupting the lobby for over 40 minutes," barked Brenda Higgins, the Olympus Hub's notoriously demanding floor manager, her designer heels clicking a furious rhythm across the polished concrete. Three impeccably dressed tech consultants, specialists in international client relations, exchanged helpless glances, their faces etched with despair. Anya Petrova, the celebrated CEO of Neuronet Innovations, stood rigid as a circuit board, her icy blue eyes conveying a volatile mixture of rising frustration and thinly veiled contempt. Her personal assistant, a young man named Leo, was a blur of motion on his tablet, clearly rescheduling multi-million-pound virtual meetings that hinged on this very accommodation. Near the grand entrance, Thomas Davies, a black man of 32, discreetly buffed the industrial chic floor, every movement precise. 6 years as a cleaner at Olympus had taught him the art of practical invisibility, a skill he now perfected as he observed the unfolding fiasco. "Mr. Henderson, call someone else." Brenda snapped at the concierge, whose brow was already slick with sweat. "This situation is turning into an international incident." The third consultant, a specialist in European languages, shook his head in defeat. "She doesn't speak French, German, or Spanish. I've tried everything, but she just ignores us as if we're invisible." Thomas paused, his gaze fixed on Anya Petrova. Something in her eyes, a flicker of something raw and desperate, resonated deeply with him, as if he alone in the room understood the true nature of her distress. Brenda Higgins paced, her exasperated sighs echoing in the vast lobby. "If we don't resolve this in the next 15 minutes, I'll have to cancel the reservation for the Innovators Suite. Imagine the financial loss to the hub." "Miss Petrova controls one of the largest AI networks in the world," whispered a junior analyst to his colleague. "If she leaves dissatisfied, our global reputation is ruined." Anya Petrova finally spoke, a torrent of rapid, clipped Russian, her gestures elegant but strained. The consultants looked utterly lost, while Brenda rolled her eyes, her impatience reaching a boiling point. It was then that Thomas slowly straightened, letting his cleaning cloth drop beside his bucket. His movements were calculated, deliberate, like someone who had just made an immense decision after carefully observing a humiliating tableau. For years, he had witnessed countless similar scenes in this elitist environment, always remaining silent as powerful figures dismissed less fortunate employees. But this time, a different fire flickered in his determined gaze. What no one in that luxurious lobby could possibly imagine was that Thomas Davies harbored a secret powerful enough to transform this diplomatic crisis into something completely unforeseen. His intervention would trigger a sequence of events that would forever alter the power dynamics of the Olympus Tech Hub. "My patience is at an end." Brenda Higgins slammed her fist on the gleaming reception counter, making all the employees flinch. "That European woman is turning my hub into a global laughingstock." Anya Petrova remained dignified and impassive, but Thomas noticed her fists clench subtly with each disrespectful word. The businesswoman clearly understood much more English than she let on. Her expression revealed not only linguistic frustration, but deep indignation at the rude treatment. "Miss Higgins," the receptionist interjected nervously, "perhaps we should try a more what?" Brenda spun on her heel, her eyes flashing with anger. "I've already wasted 2 hours of my schedule on this ridiculous situation. If she can't communicate in English, she shouldn't be staying at a world-class British tech hub." Thomas felt a familiar burning sensation in his chest, the same feeling he experienced every time he witnessed such arrogance cloaked as professionalism. His hands tightened around his broom handle, recalling countless similar situations where he'd been treated as mere furniture by wealthy clients. The manager continued her tirade, now gesturing dramatically to the small crowd of onlookers gathered in the lobby. "Look at this. One of our most expensive suites occupied by someone who can't even ask for a glass of water." "Brenda, please lower your voice," whispered Mr. Henderson, mortified by the public spectacle. But Brenda Higgins was completely out of control, fueled by the hubris of someone who'd never faced real consequences. No, enough with the political correctness. This is a British company, and if people want our premium services, they should at least speak our language. It was at that moment that Thomas had a vivid flashback. Years ago, he had been unfairly dismissed from his previous job at an analytics firm for defending a colleague from Eastern Europe who was being humiliated for not speaking perfect English. The bitter irony was that Thomas spoke 4 languages fluently, a skill he'd acquired during years as a volunteer interpreter for refugee charities, a past he'd deliberately hidden to secure this entry-level job when he was desperate. "Perhaps we should call security," Brenda suggested with calculated malice, eyeing Anya Petrova as if she were an unwelcome intruder. If she can't communicate properly, she clearly doesn't belong in this establishment. The veiled threat echoed through the lobby, causing uncomfortable murmurs. Anya Petrova lifted her chin slightly, her posture radiating an unshakable dignity that brutally contrasted with the vulgarity of the situation. Thomas watched with growing indignation, remembering how he had learned Russian over 3 years, working as a volunteer at a community center that served Eastern European immigrants. He devoted entire evenings to studying not only the language, but also cultural subtleties, driven by a genuine passion to help people facing barriers similar to those he knew intimately. "You know what really irritates me?" Brenda continued her toxic performance, now clearly playing to the watching guests. "It's this assumption that we have to adapt to them when really they should be making an effort to fit into our culture." Anya Petrova's assistant, Leo, finally lost his patience and began speaking rapidly in Russian to his boss, gesturing towards the exit. It was obvious they were considering canceling the reservation and finding another tech hub, which would represent a catastrophic financial loss and an international scandal for Olympus. Thomas felt something shifting inside him. It was no longer just passive indignation, but a growing determination he had learned to cultivate over years of facing prejudice. His eyes met Anya Petrova's briefly, and for an almost imperceptible moment, both shared a silent understanding of what was truly happening in that lobby. The businesswoman whispered something to her assistant, who immediately began typing on his tablet, probably canceling not only the hub reservation, but also the multi-million-pound contracts her company was negotiating with British partners based in the city. Brenda Higgins, completely oblivious to the financial ramifications of her ignorance, continued her display of intolerance, unaware that every arrogant word was being mentally catalogued by Thomas, a man who had learned that sometimes true strength manifests itself precisely when others expect submission. As the tension in the lobby reached breaking point and Brenda Higgins prepared for her next public humiliation, something extraordinary began to shine in Thomas Davies's eyes. It wasn't resignation or fear, but the kind of silent determination that is born when someone finally decides the time has come to transform years of injustice into a lesson no one would ever forget. Thomas Davies had made his decision. He discreetly dropped the cleaning cloth on the cart and walked with measured steps toward the group surrounding Anya Petrova. "Excuse me," he said softly, addressing the Russian businesswoman directly. His voice was low, but there was something in his tone that made several heads turn. Brenda Higgins spun on her heels, her eyes flashing with utter indignation. "Excuse me. You're interrupting a critical customer service situation. Get back to your duties immediately." But Thomas did not take his eyes off Anya Petrova. In perfect Russian, with a Moscow accent that revealed years of deep study, he said softly, "Госпожа Petrova, простите. У меня такое чувство, что здесь происходит серьезное недопонимание. Позвольте мне помочь вам." Which means, "Mrs. Petrova, forgive me. I have a feeling there's a serious misunderstanding here. Allow me to help you." The silence that followed was deafening. Anya Petrova blinked several times, as if unable to process what she had just heard. Her expression transformed completely, from frustration to genuine relief, then to deep curiosity as she watched this black man speak her language with a perfection few foreigners could master. Вы говорите по-русски? Meaning, you speak Russian? Anya asked, her voice betraying utter astonishment. She wanted to know how Thomas could speak Russian so fluently. Da, немного, which translates to, yes, a little, replied Thomas modestly, though it was obvious his proficiency went far beyond the basics. Brenda Higgins was completely paralyzed, her mouth agape in utter shock. The professional consultants looked at each other in embarrassment, realizing that a simple cleaner had achieved in seconds what they had failed to do in hours. That's impossible. Brenda finally regained her voice, but now there was a note of panic in it. You can't just… How can a cleaner… Anya Petrova interrupted Brenda with an elegant wave of her hand, addressing Thomas again in Russian. Где вы выучили русский язык? Ваше произношение очень красивое, which means, where did you learn Russian? Your pronunciation is very beautiful. Thomas smiled discreetly. Я изучал в общественном центре, помогая иммигрантам. И я очень люблю русскую культуру. Meaning, I studied at a community center, helping immigrants. And I very much love Russian culture. His reply made Anya's eyes light up. It was clear Thomas not only spoke the language but deeply understood the cultural nuances. Brenda Higgins was having what could only be described as a live, nervous breakdown. This can't be happening. You're a cleaner. You're not even supposed to be talking to the guests. It was at that moment that David Johnson, the senior operations manager and the only other black employee in a leadership position at the hub, approached discreetly. He had been watching the entire scene, his eyes revealing a mixture of admiration and genuine concern for Thomas. Ms. Higgins, David interjected diplomatically, perhaps we should allow the situation to resolve itself naturally. Our guest appears to finally be receiving proper attention. Attention from a cleaner? Brenda was completely losing her professional composure. David, are you seeing this? This person is creating an international scandal? Anya Petrova, who had understood every word in English, looked at Brenda with an icy expression that made the air around her seem colder. In clear, precise English, with only a slight accent, she said, The only person creating a scandal here is you, Miss Higgins. The shock was instant and devastating. Brenda Higgins staggered as if she had been physically punched. You speak English all this time? Fluent, Anya confirmed, her voice laden with controlled disdain. And I understood perfectly every bigoted and xenophobic insult that has come out of your mouth for the past 2 hours. Realization began to spread through the lobby like shockwaves. Guests who had witnessed the public humiliation began whispering, their expressions gradually changing from embarrassment to outrage at Brenda's behavior. David Johnson stepped forward, discreetly positioning himself beside Thomas. Mr. Davies, he said formally, using his last name for the first time in years, I appreciate your assistance in this delicate situation. Thomas nodded respectfully, but there was something new in his eyes. No longer the resignation of someone accustomed to being invisible, but the quiet determination of someone who had finally decided it was time to be seen for who he truly was. Госпожа Petrova, Thomas continued in Russian, if you'll allow me, I'd like to clear up a few misunderstandings regarding your reservation. I believe we can resolve everything quickly. Anya nodded with genuine gratitude, but also with a growing curiosity about this extraordinary man who had emerged from the shadows just when she needed him most. Brenda Higgins, realizing she had completely lost control, desperately tried to regain her authority. Thomas Davies, you are officially suspended. Leave your duties immediately. The threat echoed through the lobby, but this time it didn't have the desired effect. Thomas looked directly at Brenda, and everyone present could see something changing in real time. It wasn't fear or submission, but the kind of quiet power that is born when someone finally decides to stop hiding who they really are. I understand perfectly, Miss Higgins, Thomas replied with a calmness that bordered on the supernatural. But before I leave, I would like to ensure that our guest is treated with the respect she deserves. What Brenda Higgins couldn't see, blinded by her arrogance and prejudice, was that every disrespectful word, every discriminatory gesture had been carefully observed not only by Thomas, but by Anya Petrova, a woman whose international influence could turn that prosperous tech hub into ancient history with a single phone call. As the tension in the lobby reached a critical point, and Brenda Higgins prepared to escalate her campaign of humiliation even further, something extraordinary began to form in the air. It wasn't just an employee standing up for a guest, but the beginning of a transformation that would reveal the true nature of every person present at that decisive moment, proving that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. The Olympus Tech Hub lobby had been transformed into a theater where Brenda Higgins was about to discover that she had chosen the wrong opponents for her display of prejudice and arrogance. Anya Petrova elegantly took out her phone, activating the recorder that had been running discreetly throughout the public humiliation. "Miss Higgins," she said in an icy voice, "I would like to clarify a few things about my identity before this conversation ends." Brenda was visibly panicking, her face alternating between red with anger and white with growing terror. I don't understand what's going on here. This situation is completely out of control." "My full name is Anya Petrova, CEO of NeuroNet Innovations," the businesswoman continued, her voice echoing through the now completely silent lobby. "Our company has corporate hosting contracts worth £15 million annually with British tech chains." The silence that followed was deafening. David Johnson, the senior operations manager, closed his eyes momentarily, realizing the magnitude of the catastrophe Brenda had created. The other employees looked at each other with expressions of growing horror. "Furthermore," Anya continued relentlessly, "I am a member of the Global Tech Governance Board that certifies establishments for international executive guests. A negative recommendation from me could result in the cancellation of contracts worth tens of millions of pounds annually." Brenda Higgins began to shake visibly, finally realizing that she was not dealing with an ordinary visitor, but with someone who had enough power to completely dismantle the hub's reputation with a single decision. But more importantly, Anya raised her voice slightly, ensuring that everyone in the lobby could hear clearly, "is that for the past 2 hours, I have recorded every prejudiced word, every discriminatory gesture, and every display of xenophobia that has come out of your mouth." That can't be legal," Brenda stammered desperately. "You can't record conversations without consent." David Johnson stepped forward, his voice professional but firm. "Actually, Miss Higgins, in public areas such as the hub lobby, there is no legal expectation of privacy. All of our security cameras also recorded the entire incident." The realization hit Brenda like a devastating tsunami. Not only had her words been recorded, but they had also been filmed by the hub's own security system, creating irrefutable evidence of her discriminatory conduct. Anya Petrova tapped her phone screen with precise movements. "I have already sent copies of this recording to the tech governance boards of 4 countries, to the national management of this tech hub chain, and to my public relations team in Moscow." "No," Brenda practically screamed, completely losing her professional composure. "You can't destroy my career because of a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Thomas Davies finally spoke, his voice laden with an authority no one in the hub had heard before. "Miss Higgins, I have worked here for 6 years and witnessed countless similar situations. The difference is that today, your victim had the power to defend herself." Anya nodded respectfully to Thomas before continuing her devastating counterattack. "Mr. Davies, I would like you to know that I took the liberty of researching your professional background while observing the situation unfold." Brenda Higgins appeared to be having a complete nervous breakdown, realizing that she had completely lost control of the situation and that every second that passed only worsened her position. "I discovered that you have a degree in linguistics with a specialization in Eastern European cultures, have worked as a volunteer interpreter for refugee organizations, and are fluent in 4 languages," Anya continued, addressing Thomas with genuine respect. "You are exactly the type of professional my company is looking for to expand our British operations." The shock on the faces of all the employees present was instantaneous. For years, Thomas had been treated as disposable labor, when in fact, he possessed qualifications that most tech managers could only dream of having. David Johnson looked at Brenda with an expression that mixed disbelief and deep professional disappointment. "Miss Higgins, not only did you humiliate one of our most important guests, but you also wasted an exceptional talent that was right under our noses. Brenda was now completely desperate, trying to find some way to save her ruined career. "I can explain. It was a stressful moment. I didn't mean to." "You meant exactly what you said," Anya interrupted her coldly. "And thanks to modern technology, your true opinions about people you consider different are now permanently documented." Brenda's phone began to ring insistently. It was clearly her regional director, probably already aware of the international catastrophe she had created. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely answer the call. "Hello?" Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Yes, Mr. Carmichael. I can explain." "No, sir. I didn't know she was." While Brenda desperately tried to justify herself on the phone, Anya turned to Thomas with a proposal that would completely change his life. "Mr. Davies, I would like to offer you a position as Coordinator of Intercultural Innovation at our British branch. The starting salary would be £90,000 a year, plus full benefits." The silence in the lobby was absolute. Thomas had gone from invisible cleaner to international executive in a matter of hours. All because he had the courage to do the right thing at the right time. Brenda Higgins hung up the phone, her face completely pale. I've been fired," she announced to the empty lobby, her voice breaking. "Fired for cause. I'll never be able to work in the tech industry again." Justice had been served in a complete and devastating way. Brenda had lost not only her job, but also her professional reputation, her references, and any possibility of continuing her career in her chosen field. Meanwhile, Thomas was finally being recognized for the exceptional talent he had always possessed. As Brenda Higgins gathered her belongings under the contemptuous glances of the same colleagues who had once admired her, a single question hung in the tense air of that transformed lobby. Was it possible that a single act of courage and dignity could completely rewrite the rules of power and respect that had governed that environment for decades? Proving that sometimes true revolution begins with someone who simply refuses to remain invisible when they witness injustice. 6 months later, Thomas Davies sat in his office on the executive floor of Neuronet Innovations, looking out the panoramic windows at the spectacular view of Manchester, a city he had once known only from the perspective of someone cleaning server rooms and hallways. His transformation had been complete and inspiring. As Coordinator of Intercultural Innovation, he had already implemented diversity programs at 12 partner companies, built commercial bridges between previously marginalized communities and the corporate world, and developed cultural training protocols that became a national benchmark. "Thomas, the meeting with the Russian executives is confirmed for 3, announced his assistant, David Johnson, who had left the Olympus Tech Hub to work as his right-hand man at the new company. The partnership between them had proven extraordinary. 2 people who deeply understood the value of recognizing hidden talent. "Perfect, David. And how's our new intern?" Thomas asked, referring to a young Eastern European woman he had discovered working as a barista at another tech hub, speaking 3 languages fluently, but being completely ignored by management. "She's thriving beyond all expectations," David smiled, "just as you predicted she would." At that very moment, across town, Brenda Higgins sat in a small, rundown apartment, flipping through online job listings for administrative assistant roles. Her dismissal from the Olympus Tech Hub had become a national scandal after Anya Petrova released recordings of her discriminatory conduct. Brenda's reputation had been completely destroyed. No prestigious tech company would even consider her CV. Her family had distanced themselves after the public exposure of her prejudices, and she had lost not only her career but also her social and financial identity. Social media continued to regularly remind her of her xenophobic comments, turning her into a national symbol of how prejudice and arrogance can destroy a life in a matter of hours. Every attempt to rebuild her professional image was hampered by the viral video documenting her complete humiliation. Meanwhile, the Olympus Tech Hub had undergone a complete cultural revolution. The new management, acutely aware of the international scandal that had nearly destroyed the hub's reputation, implemented rigorous diversity and inclusion programs, mandatory cultural sensitivity training, and promotion policies based solely on merit, and competence. Anya Petrova had become not only a regular client, but also a minority investor in the hub, ensuring that the changes were permanent and meaningful. Her influence had transformed the Olympus Tech Hub into a national model of inclusive and respectful hospitality in the tech industry. "You know what makes me most proud about this whole story?" Anya remarked during lunch with Thomas at his favorite Russian restaurant. "It wasn't just helping you find your true place in the world, but proving that when we recognize and value genuine diversity, everyone wins." Thomas nodded, remembering that decisive moment in the hub lobby when he decided he would no longer remain invisible in the face of injustice. "For years, I believed that my education and skills were worthless because the people around me refused to see them. I discovered that the problem was never with me." "And Brenda Higgins?" Anya asked with genuine curiosity, without malice. "I hear she's working as a call center operator," Thomas replied without cruel satisfaction. "I sincerely hope she learned something valuable about respect and humility. True justice isn't about destroying people, but about creating opportunities for everyone to grow." That afternoon, as Thomas led a video conference with executives from 5 different countries, translating and mediating multi-million-pound negotiations with the same ease with which he had once cleaned concrete floors, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him there. His story had become an inspiration to thousands of people through social media, documentaries, and motivational speeches, not as a tale of cruel revenge, but as proof that true power lies in recognizing our own worth, regardless of the opinions of others. The most powerful lesson Thomas had learned, and now shared with audiences around the world, was that the best response to prejudice is not hatred or bitterness, but unquestionable excellence that forces even the most skeptical to recognize the truth. Brenda Higgins had tried to humiliate him, diminish him, and make him invisible, but she ended up creating the exact circumstances that allowed Thomas to shine with an intensity he would never have discovered under normal conditions. Sometimes, our greatest enemies do us the unwitting favor of showing us our true strength. Today, while Thomas Davies leads one of the most successful divisions of an international company, Brenda Higgins lives with the lasting consequences of confusing temporary social status with real human value, proving that in the end, true victory does not lie in destroying those who harm us, but in building something so extraordinary that it renders any attempt to diminish our greatness irrelevant.